right. Hello, everybody. Something a little bit different today. This is my first SE review show, and I have some really cool members of the SE community here with me. Who are gonna go. Yeah, and Will too. Who are gonna take a look at me and give me some constructive criticism and have a little bit of a discussion about my most recent interview that I had with Alex, which was all about whether abortion should be legal or not. This was a conversation that I felt like I kind of succeeded in spite of myself. I felt like I definitely got lost a couple times, kind of stumbled my way through things, maybe changed the topic when I shouldn't have. And so I feel like I can learn a lot from this conversation, maybe more so than some of my earlier ones. And so I've got some really cool people here who are going to help give me that feedback. So if you guys would like to introduce yourselves, we can just go down. So Dali, you're right below me. So if you want to go first.
Hi, I'm Dali. I'm juggling lessons. I do a lot of panel shows. I have my own channel, and I really like hanging out and working with Reed doing Spectrum at UCLA most recently.
Doing Spectrum sounds like a new crazy drug.
Yeah, Spectrum SE. Yeah.
Very endorphin producing. It is a dopamine kick.
It's all the cool kids are doing it.
Yeah, right. All right, Mark, want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi there, I'm Mark Solomon. I have a podcast and a YouTube channel called Being Reasonable, and I've been doing this kind of content creation since 2019, and I'm really excited to be invited to do Nathan's first review show because it's really cool to start with somebody right at the beginning, and as they kind of do their first SE and you see how they do it, and then like a different technique that, different ways they do it that other people haven't done it in the past. So I always like to see different people do SE.
Yeah, and I'm really excited that Mark is here because one of the main reasons I actually finally got started and kind of got the kick in the pants to actually go do this is Mark started having new creator meetings within the SE community, and I joined up with that. I've been watching SE for a long time, maybe commenting on some videos, and I created a club at the school that I teach at, kind of revolving around SE. But I hadn't actually gone out there and done it yet until Mark kind of got that ball rolling. So I'm really excited that Mark is here.
And thanks for saying that, Nate. And also, we will be having more content creator meetings. So if you're watching this and you want to try your hand at it, we'd love to have you try your hand at it, and we'll help you.
It's very cool.
Awesome. So I'm Will, by the way. Inspire Reflection is my YouTube channel. I've been kicking around the community for 2 years or so, making a nuisance of myself and enjoying every minute of it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys once again, all for being here and helping me out with this. And a special thanks to Dali for running the stream and the StreamYard stuff, because I need to learn how to do that. But he's an old pro at it at this point. So
weeks and weeks.
Yep.
Before we start the video, I was just wondering if I could ask a few questions about the context. So was this a pre-arranged interview, or was this a member of the public that just sort of stopped by? Or what's the setup here?
Yeah, this is just me in a park, kind of just doing out in public SE. I had a whiteboard advertising like, hey, I'm doing short YouTube interviews, essentially. If you've got the time for it, here are some topics. You can choose any topic you want. And so Alex was walking by, and she initially was like, oh, this is so cool. I watch this kind of stuff on YouTube or whatever, which I don't know if she's familiar with SE. It didn't seem like it, but the kind of like guy in a park wants to interview for the internet. And so she was kind of excited about it. She was like, oh, this, I've always kind of wanted to do this. And so this is the topic that she chose. So totally, fresh, didn't know her, had just a little bit of chatting before the cameras got rolling, but not a whole lot. So what you see is pretty much the interaction and the extent of the relationship at that point.
Awesome. That's great.
Cool. Any other questions or comments before we get started with the video?
No, except that this is a really hard, thanks for allowing us to review this. This is, generally these kinds of claims are very difficult to conduct, just because there's a lot of emotion involved often. And also it's a normative claim, which we will need to talk about a little bit later as well, which I find difficult maybe if you're starting out and doing SE. Maybe others would disagree, but
Yeah,
so
and I think because of that, I make some mistakes. I think that's maybe part of the reason why.
we all
would
still
you-
make them.
Would you explain what a normative claim is so that we can listen out for it as we're watching the video?
Yes, a normative claim, instead of more of a factual claim, a normative claim, you listen for the words like should, this should be the case, or it's more of an ethical standard of the way the world should be instead of a factual claim. I don't know if I described that well, but I think Dali
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. All right, cool.
Good.
Well, if nothing else, let's go ahead and roll it.
Like, God, like, there's not a whole lot I can say on that because, like, that sounds like a really, really tough situation to be in. And I'm really thankful. I've never been there. I can't imagine that would be an easy choice for anybody to make at that point.
Right.
Like, I would say they must have good reasons. I don't know. I trust the person making the decision is making what's best for them. It's unfortunate. I'm not saying that I think that's great.
Okay.
Do what you want, but also do what you want.
So why did you choose that moment for the cold open teaser there, and clearly going for the cold open teaser?
Yeah, I honestly, I'm just doing cold open teasers because I see other people do them and I think they're cool. Yeah, that it's always a tricky thing to decide on if you're going to do those. I think it's one of those things that I think might spark some interest. It's kind of the do what you want thing. Might be one of those things that might spark some emotions in some people depending on the perspective. And it's one of those things where there were some other things she said that I think were maybe a little bit more incendiary if you were to just snip them out and put them. And I didn't want to be like, oh, look at this extremist, because I don't think she is, first of all.
Right.
I think we got to a point where we kind of revealed her like moral intuitions about it, but at the beginning of the conversation, if you just took a different clip, you might think very differently of like what she was thinking. So this is kind of gets it where she is, but not like I don't think it paints in her bad light. I really hope that I didn't by clipping that out. I was mainly like thought it was intriguing and maybe would get some people to stick around. I don't know.
Yeah,
So.
it's an odd sort of sense where your responsibility as a content creator and a YouTuber and wanting to get the message out and get people engaged with the message conflicts with perhaps the intention of fairly representing and evenly representing what's said in context. Mm-hmm. It's a difficult one.
Right.
Do you guys have any other thoughts on it, Mark and Dali? Do you have thoughts on these cold opens?
Clickbait is not a moral failing.
Interesting.
Even if you end up misrepresenting the person and then the people go dig and go, oh, okay, in context that wasn't nearly so bad, that can be okay.
Yeah, I don't do them, but I'm thinking maybe I should. So,
yeah. I mean, cool. I personally like with clickbait, but it does work.
Yeah, and I try not to be too clickbaity, like with titles and thumbnails and that stuff. I try to just present, this is the claim, and that's it. Like when I post things online and say, here's a conversation, this is what we talked about. I don't try to like snip out like a quote that's like divisive.
Yeah.
But I do try to like give a little preview of like, okay, this is kind of where this conversation is going to go in the cold open, and here's maybe a thing that you find interesting or maybe gets you hooked in a little bit. I don't know, like, but I do try to avoid it with thumbnails and other kind of social media posts and that kind of stuff. I don't want to be too clickbaity, but I do want people to watch it.
I think this hints at something that, you know, I just don't think you want to be controlling the narrative, right? As the street epistemologist, like it's a very not SE thing to do, to sort of frame what's being said and say that this part of it's the important part, almost like you kind of just want the conversation to happen. It's sort of I don't know. I know I've been mentioning recently this idea of neutrality, and I think it slightly tips the hand if you were to say, you know, in the neutrality space, if you are to say this was the important moment in the conversation, or this is the moment in the conversation that has the main sort of drive of the conversation. I don't know. I find it interesting, but I don't suggest that we should stop doing them. I just think it's an interesting conversation.
Agreed.
Nice logo.
Thanks. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, maybe you'll be YouTube famous now. Probably not. First of all, I'm Nate. What's your name?
Alex.
Alex. Alex or?
Yep.
All right. Cool. All right. And what are you doing here in the park today?
Just taking the dog for a walk.
Nope.
Beautiful day.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's perfect outside. Do you come here a lot?
No, I don't. I live downtown, so it's kind of a hike out here. But...
Yeah, it is. I live kind of north of town, so it's a little way. I'm not really too super close to any parks, but this is perfect day to be out here. So,
yeah. Absolutely.
What were there any of those topics that you saw on the board that you want to talk about, or something else?
I mean, any of them.
Okay, well, I don't want to pick one for you, so. If you want to look at them again, if there's anything that you think sounds the most interesting, or maybe something that you feel like you feel strongly about.
Mm-hmm.
That was good. Not picking the topic was really good.
Okay, it's been in the news a lot recently, so okay. So that'll be our topic, and I guess the question I have on there is, should it be legal or not? So how do you feel about that? What's your initial reaction to that question?
I think abortion should absolutely be legal.
Okay, abortion should be legal.
Yes.
All right.
Safe access to abortion everywhere.
Cool. All right. And something generally do when starting these conversations out is kind of gauge your confidence in that. Like, so this could be on like a scale from like 0 to 100, where it's like 0, I'm not sure at all. And 100, I'm absolutely certain, or you could go 0 to 10 or whatever. So if you think about, okay, how confident am I that abortion should be legal? Where do you feel like you are?
100%.
100%. Okay, absolutely certain. All right. And this was the. I just want to say this is the first interview I had. This was my 5th like SE interview out in public. This is the first time somebody said 100%. So I was kind of like, oh. That's kind of exciting. Go ahead, Will.
That's cool. Yeah, so I'm wondering if this is like almost the first place where a normative claim comes into play here, because your confidence in something being true, but you have conviction in something being morally correct. So it's almost like you might want to think about saying, hey, this how strong is your conviction in this statement from a scale from 1 to 10 or 1 to 100 or what have you, because it starts to feel like we're applying non-normative structures around a normative claim.
Right. We're no longer talking about whether something is true.
Right.
That I like that, like using the word conviction as opposed to confidence. Is that what you're getting at there?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. How strong is your conviction in this claim?
And David has a good point too. If you want, a normative claim can sometimes be easily turned into a factual claim by asking why the IL believes the normative claim, if you'd rather explore a factual claim, which I find they're just more cut and dry if you're just starting out doing these kinds of things. But I think I remember Dali saying that he actually prefers normative claims. Am I wrong? Maybe I'm wrong about that. But
I'm completely comfortable with normative claims. What I see David referring to here, of David of Sound Epistemology, in case that's not obvious to anybody, is what I think of as the ROM rule. I learned it from ROM, in that he would ask, if your claim is true, if everybody changed to agreeing with you on that normative claim, what would change in the world? And now you've made a claim about the world, about the effect of their belief. And you can get back to a confidence that is probabilistic. I think when we're dealing with normative or moral or, normative claims, that confidence is not correlated with probabilistic thinking. It's conviction.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As a result, I'm just out of the habit on normative claims asking for a confidence level. If it's normative, I don't bother. That's not a rule. That's just it avoids this question there. And dropping the confidence question, I will call the tie rule from Dr. Tyrone Wells of Let's Chat, who first encouraged me to drop the confidence scale.
Something good to keep in mind. Cool. So I guess the first question is, why do you think that? Why do you think abortion should be legal? 100%.
I think that making it illegal is not going to stop abortions. It's just going to stop safe abortions in a medical facility where they should be happening.
Okay. And this right here is exactly what I think Dali was getting at. That she did this for me, and I didn't pursue it. Like, I've like, upon rewatching, I was like, why did I even write that down if I didn't look at my board? Yeah, because she basically does that exact thing where she says this is why this is the thing that's going to happen in the real world, essentially. But I look for clarification, and then that asking for clarification thing what sent me down this whole normative morality rabbit trail, and I never came back to this main reason she gave. Which, why would I not address the main reason like that? I just kicked myself when I was editing this.
Well, first of all, we all do that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're just in the moment and you're
right.
paying attention to one thing and you'll watch a video and like, I didn't even realize my Al said this, So yeah. Can we hear that part again? What's her primary reason?
I backed it up until he looked silly and so I can hear it again.
Okay.
So, I guess the first question is, why do you think that? Why do you think abortion should be legal? 100%.
I think that making it illegal is not going to stop abortions. It's just going to stop safe abortions in a medical facility where they should be happening.
Okay.
It's an interesting primary reason she's getting, and it's not a moral claim. It's really, it's just the claim is it's not going to do anything.
Yeah, the moral part of that claim is people should have access to safe healthcare, which is like, yeah. So yeah.
Right. And maybe that's part of it is that like so far I haven't had any interviews where I disagree with the person in general. Like I'm usually like, if I'm not exactly on their side, I'm close to being on their side about the topic. We might have different confidence levels, we might have different reasons. And so I think that might be part of the reason why I didn't pick up on that. But I kind of pursued a thing that she said that I maybe somewhat disagreed with instead of actually addressing the main reasons. Like I guess maybe it's that default, let's argue. Like I didn't argue, but kind of have that temptation maybe.
Based on what she says later, I suspect this isn't actually her main reason. I think this was is a justification she's giving, but I don't think if it helps you at all, I don't think this is her main reason. The question you could have asked, of course, is if it could be demonstrated that that by banning abortions, it did prevent 100% of abortions, and legal or safe or otherwise. Would that change your mind? I suspect it wouldn't change her mind, because she talks an awful lot about the right for individuals to decide for themselves later on, which I think is more of a motivating factor for her. But
yeah.
But as her primary reason is stated, that's a testable claim. It's not going to do something to do abortion, or it's going to do something for abortion. That you could set that test up somehow.
Right. Yeah. I really wish we would have come back to it. Yeah. I wanted to clarify the claim, and then we go off down a totally different direction. But like you said,
if you hit all rabbit holes, you can't get done in under an hour.
Right.
I'm regularly deeply embarrassed about something I said 5 seconds ago, much less in a video I did.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, goodness. Yeah.
I think abortion should be legal for any purpose.
For any purpose. Okay. Maybe we should explore that a little bit when you say for any purpose. What can you clarify a little bit what you mean by that?
Whether it's like a medically necessary procedure or whether it's somebody's choice, I think the reason doesn't really matter.
Okay, gotcha. So there are lots of like governments, both in the past here or other places around the country or around the world, that have certain restrictions on it. Do you think there shouldn't be any restrictions whatsoever, or should there be some restrictions in certain cases?
I don't know how you can have a restriction on some and not others, like when it comes to something like this.
Okay, so no restrictions whatsoever. Okay. I'm going to jot that down. Okay. Just so I make sure that
I might have
don't lose any of this.
maybe misunderstood the question.
Okay. So for example, like in many places you could get an abortion for any reason, no restrictions whatsoever, up until like 16 weeks in the pregnancy or 20 weeks in the pregnancy.
Oh,
they have certain
they
have certain cutoff times.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry if I wasn't clear. That's my fault.
Okay.
So do you have thoughts on that?
I don't honestly really know a whole lot. I've never had a baby. I've never been pregnant, so I don't like really know how that works like medically.
Okay.
I mean, are you like, I don't really know how restrictions would work medically, but like personally, I think it should be left up to like medical professionals is what I'm trying to say basically.
Okay. So
like, I don't really have a say. Hi.
Hello. Yeah, and here she had a dog with her, so yeah.
Will, I think you're off
Okay,
mic.
so
exciting.
Hello. Maybe what I'll do is I'll go on mic and then people might respond to so up until this point, there's a few things. One is I really like your pacing, like you're taking your time with this, and I think that's really nice.
Thanks.
I think you were really open to the way she was. You owned like the communication error, but you didn't do it. You went over the top with it. You just owned it, and I think one thing I might have done, and I tried to do, and I've mentioned this before, is just sort of mirror the recognize that it's okay not to know things. Like, especially when there might be a feeling that there's an expectation that we should know these things, right? But I think it's usually, I find quite valuable to echo the fact that it's okay not to know something, regardless of whatever it is. And saying I don't know should be always, I think, going like, hey, that's totally cool. Not that's not a problem. Yeah, I think it really helps make I don't know become more of an okay thing to have and say in the conversation. And I think that's a really useful tool to put on the board. But yeah, up until this point, the conversation's been like, I just really like the pacing of it. I think that you've been taking the time to ask good questions.
I think he's doing a great job, and I agree with you, Will. Absolutely. I typically try to reward that. When someone says, I don't know, I just like, oh, thank you. I mean, thanks for saying that, because,
right.
That's great. I don't know is a completely fair response.
Yeah, we have most things.
So, yeah.
The idea of viability comes up later, like the viability of like a fetus. And she was like, well, I don't know. And I said, I don't either. I'm not an obstetrician. That sort of thing. I probably could have reworded that a little bit more, but I was saying, yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, I'm not an expert in this either. Right. Because once again, I generally agree with her. We should be deferring to experts. Like, that's a pretty good one. Generally, not always. I don't want to upset Dali. I know he's
regarding the conversation, where are you going? Where are you going here, Nate? As far as like, what's your goal here, right? As far as exploring her epistemology, like what do you think? I mean, I'm just trying to kind of think of your thought process now.
Yeah, that's a good question, because this was a little bit of a challenge for me, because I think this is a really important topic. I'm generally on her side. I don't want to sway her over to like a pro-life position or something like that. I'm not trying to convince her. I'm not generally pro-life myself. So, I want to be careful not to like rip the rug out from under her or something like that. But yeah, I just want to kind of explore, get to kind of her reasons. If she has good reasons, awesome. If she maybe doesn't, maybe we could find a better one.
So you're just trying to find her general reasons. Okay.
Yeah. But I do have, maybe not legally, I think I, for the most part, totally agree. But I could be convinced otherwise. But then she said, like, any reason, doesn't matter, no restrictions, like that to me is something I feel like most people would disagree with. And I think like morally and ethically, I have issues with that. Even if I am looking at it from like a utilitarian perspective on the law, maybe I do agree with her there. But I also feel like sometimes
when I hear any reason in a conversation, that says to me, I take that as heart, any reason. So meaning that reasons, if it's any reason, then I guess reasons really don't matter. And so there's something else going on usually.
Right. And she was at 100% too, which, and we already kind of discussed the whole confidence versus conviction thing. But to me, whenever I have somebody say 100% any reason, like she seems very, maybe not like closed-minded, but possibly she is. And so I want to kind of explore that too. And like, as somebody who's kind of generally on her side in this topic, I feel like the opposing side likes to paint with a broad brush, and like, they're like, oh, pro-choice people just don't even care about babies and they'd be fine murdering them whenever or something.
That's why this claim is so hard. It is. It's hard when you agree with it, and because when you do your best SE is when you can divorce yourself from the actual claim, which is hard in this case, especially because you're thinking, my family is going to be watching this video and they're going to be like, what? Like, what is he doing? Like, he seems to be defending this. And so that's what makes these claims really hard. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I upset some people in the abortion debate subreddit who probably thought I was a pro-lifer, but that
I think this is an interesting characteristic of SE, but it's probably it's not actually really to do with SE. I think it's a cultural thing. I think when people feel like you're asking questions about something, it is not because you're openly trying to encourage them to reflect on their reasons. It's because you're passive aggressively opposing it. And this is not true in SE, but the optics are going to look. So one of the things I've said before, one of the criticisms of SE is it always seems like it's in opposition to religion when it's addressing religious topics. But in theory, it will always look like it's in opposition to any topic. So it'll be in opposition to the theory of evolution if the theory of evolution is the claim being explored. Because I will be trying to ask you questions to encourage you to reflect on why you believe the theory of evolution is a valid theory. And just because of the optics of that, the way people see you asking questions in society, it will look like you're in opposition to the thing being explored. You've not taken what the person has said as a de facto truth. You're not treating it as if you agree with them and that it's true. You're continuing to ask questions, and that is often in society an indicator that you disagree with them. Unfortunately, that's just a byproduct of doing SE, and maybe worth mentioning at the beginning of the conversation. It may be worth something, you could say, I'm going to ask you questions about whatever the topic is. So please don't feel attacked, or, it might be worth mentioning. I don't think it would do any harm to do so. The other thing is, I think right now is like in the conversation is one of the reasons why it's a little bit difficult is because of the nature of this normative claim. In some ways, you're finding it hard. You're essentially trying to judge her reasons against your own moral intuitions. And that's something really we should really try to avoid in SE, right? We don't want to get into a position where we're judging someone's moral intuitions. We want to know what's supporting those moral intuitions and asking them to reflect on whether that support for that moral intuition is justified or not, whether it correctly is leading them to where they want to be.
And the hard part where I see where you are is that I see, this time, but also maybe a little bit later on, there's a little bit of signaling going on that you're signaling that, hey, I kind of agree with you here about, this, but I'm just going to go ahead and ask you these questions, but I'm kind of signaling to you that I agree with you. And I think if you're doing SE, I try not, and I'm definitely not always successful, but I try not to signal to the person hopefully they don't know what I believe, because there's going to be times where that signaling could work against you. And if she's trying because it's not about you, it's about her, and she's trying to find out, the quality of her own reasons, and your reasons shouldn't really come into it.
I was actually just thinking about that. Like, would it sometimes be appropriate to make somebody less defensive though? If you do, I don't.
I try to do that.
I generally don't, but I like if I initially come out and say, hey, you know what? I actually agree with you generally, but let's explore your reasons together. I'm not here to attack you. I just wonder what your reasons are and if they are good reasons. I don't know if people have done that before. I know that we generally don't want to signal, but maybe be willing to answer questions.
Now, if she asks you a question directly, that's a different story. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Which she never did. So I didn't say.
Yeah, it's interesting that I don't know whether it would be better to tip your hand or not in terms. I mean, in some ways it builds immediate rapport, but in another way, I wonder if it might undermine. future conversations you might have with the same interlocutor where you are in opposition to it, right? So it would give you an advantage perhaps in one side of some conversations you might have, and it might disadvantage you in others. So I think the idea that you would ask the same kinds of questions with the same level of engagement, regardless of the topic or where you stand on it, makes, I think, a street epistemologist, a useful person to talk to.
By the end of the conversation, you may agree on the belief, but you may realize by the end of the conversation, it's not about the belief at all. You might have completely a different epistemology. Like she believes that all abortion should be legal because green aliens are telling her that should be the case. I mean, you have no idea, right?
Right.
And then well, we're just not really on board here, So yeah,
which is perfect because we want people to hold views that we think are good, but more importantly, we want to hold them for good reasons. I personally would find it better to have somebody hold a position I totally disagreed with, but held it because they really thought about it, than held a position that I did agree with but had just whatever reasons they hadn't really thought about it, hadn't engaged with it. So that's, I think, a core part of why SE is important, because I think it's challenging equally everybody to have better reasons for believing and holding the positions that they hold. So I think that neutrality is super important.
But you're doing a great job, really. So
absolutely.
We're not. It's not personal, but it's just.
Thanks.
I love talking to people who are doing their videos for the first time, because it's such a learning experience for people who are watching, and this is you're going through this, so it's awesome.
This is largely a factor, I think, of the wandering into a normative claim that you agree with as an early video.
It's a difficult challenging. It's a hard one. Yeah.
I have broken neutrality in the past out of respect. There was about a year and a half ago, a Messianic Jew that came to my table and showed me a prayer that she wanted me to read. And before I read the prayer, I said, now, it doesn't matter if I agree with any of this, right? Because it would be disrespectful for me to pretend to be a theist reading her prayer for her.
Yeah.
I think in that case. And so I think it was more positive that I declared I was not a believer in that case. But it's a special case.
Right.
Oh. All right. Dogs got to say hi to each other. That's important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so So I guess that comes kind of back to the whole, because the question is phrased as like a legal thing. So is that maybe kind of an idea here that's in your head about, maybe there could be some sort of restrictions, but not like from the government, or it shouldn't be a law sort of thing. It should be like up to the physicians and the woman.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So then, are there any situations, I know you said you don't know that much about, some of maybe the biology of it or whatever, right?
Science part.
So this is just, I'm going to kind of push back with like a kind of extreme case, and I just want to get your thoughts on it, okay? Not trying to like trap you or like gotcha or anything like that. But let's say we have somebody who, a woman's carrying a baby and she's 39 weeks pregnant, and she could deliver anytime.
What's the math? How many months?
40 weeks is like the general gestational term. Yeah. So almost ready. The baby is like fully developed. And she's not in any sort of like health risk. Should there be a restriction preventing her from getting an abortion?
And the reason for getting an abortion is what?
Like if she just decides she doesn't want the baby anymore. This is an extreme. I don't know if this ever happens. I would be surprised if it does. But like, let's just say that we had that sort of situation. How would you feel about that?
There's not a whole lot I can say on that, because like that sounds like a really, really tough situation to be in, and I'm really thankful. I've never been there. I can't imagine that would be an easy choice for anybody to make at that point.
Right.
I would say they must have good reasons. I don't know. I trust the person making the decision is making what's best for them. It's unfortunate. I'm not saying that I think that's great. Do what you want, but also do what you want.
All right.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Will.
Oh no, I was just going to commend the lady's empathy there. I thought that was it was very well answered. I thought I like the fact that she immediately recognized that, given that she didn't know the circumstances, she assumed that there must be good circumstances, which was quite admirable.
But I think it's interesting that it's really doesn't. I'm getting that the reason doesn't matter still, right? Is that what I'm hearing? The reasons don't matter.
Yeah.
I think yeah. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say in a second. I think it's going to come that this point's going to come home. But currently, I think she's saying, in general, that the autonomy of the decision should be left to the individual, and that the priority should be given to that person making a decision. And I think that's going to come back in a moment to be becoming an interesting point.
Yeah, and that might be, maybe I subconsciously detected this, that like, okay, this might be the real reason, even though she gave a different reason earlier about, it just prevents safe abortions or whatever the case may be. I felt like she has like this overriding morality of like autonomy and choice, and I was honestly very surprised at this point, because I know that I even said in the video, like, I don't think this is a realistic hypothetical, but it's not impossible. So, what do you think about this? And to me, this is like one of the most extreme kind of things that could happen. Maybe I'm wrong, but to me, I would have kind of expected her to say, "Oh no, I don't know about that one," or "That doesn't seem like maybe that should be allowed." And she didn't. She just stuck with like kind of that overriding principle that I think was in her head, and maybe this is where that whole 100% thing comes in. And so I then pursued this from here, and I don't know if it was the right call, the right thing to pursue, but it felt like it was the thing we needed to talk about.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go, Mike.
No, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, I would be really careful about thinking about people's moral worldviews as a kind of as a defined moral code. People, I think, have moral intuition heuristics. Like they have principles that they broadly agree with that largely guide their decision. And in this case, I think autonomy of the individual is her intuition heuristic. And so what you're doing is you're basically probing the limits of this particular intuition heuristic that she's using to guide her decisions on the abortion question more broadly. And that's a great thing. I think as an SE conversation, I think that's a great thing to do. It's to stretch those limits, create an argumentum ad absurdum, create extreme cases, and explore the edges of that case. I think the problem comes when we might frame those moral intuitions as somebody's sort of decided upon moral law, as if they've done all the calculus around this and have come to perfect conclusions about all of this, and therefore they may feel that when you've pointed out that their intuition heuristics, as I like to think of it, come into conflict with some particular edge case, that actually, well, you haven't done any thinking on this at all, or you've not really thought this through. That's not the case. I don't really believe we operate in a world where we have this sort of carefully thought through set of ways we want to operate. We just have these heuristics, and sometimes these heuristics aren't covering all of the edge cases, and sometimes they even come into conflict with each other, and that's worth noticing. But it's really important, I think, to not make it feel like an aha gotcha moment when you sort of identify these spaces, which I don't think you do, by the way. Right. But yeah, I think it's worth thinking about.
I try to avoid doing that. It's kind of exactly what I'm doing, is trying to say like, okay, like I want to help her think about it. And I think by the end, I think she does move from this position, maybe not with respect to the law, but I think she does kind of, and it might not be that she even moved. It might be that she just, while thinking about it, discovered more about her own moral intuitions, which to me is a win. Like to me, that's success. So.
Spoilers.
Spoilers.
Indeed. Yeah.
All right. Anything else, or should we move on? All right.
I don't know if it could be safely done at that point, what a doctor would recommend at that point. Like,
yeah,
I think I'd take that into consideration.
All right. So this is just,
It's okay.
I'm just wondering, like, what do you think somebody who maybe would say that it shouldn't be legal at that point, like in this kind of extreme situation, what reasons do you think they might have for saying, no, we shouldn't allow her to get an elective abortion at 39, a week before the baby's due, sort of thing? What sort of reasons do you think they might have for thinking the other way?
Yeah. Probably some personal reasons. Maybe that would just be hard morally for some people.
Okay.
Maybe it goes back to also safety. Like, I don't know what the procedure would be like at that point. So I don't know how that would work.
Okay.
Physically. But like, this goes back to what we talked about earlier was I don't think it should be in politics or legal or anything like that. Like, it shouldn't be that anyway. So at that point, it should just be a total medical decision.
So, Nathan, you're trying to find out, you're asking her what would be somebody else's reason for thinking that abortion should be legal.
It's illegal at that point.
Illegal.
Yeah. So I'm trying to say, okay, let's think about somebody who disagrees with you.
I mean, illegal,
and maybe I wasn't very clear about it.
Yeah.
So
you're trying to find out. I'm trying to find out why you're asking the question. I'm just trying to.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm looking at is she familiar with opposing arguments to her position? I kind of figure that probably everybody would be with this topic, but maybe not. I could be assuming. I don't want to make assumptions. So I'm trying to think, like, how well have you thought this through? Why would somebody else who is opposed to and doesn't think you should be legally allowed to have an abortion at 39 weeks, why would they say, no, this should be illegal, essentially? Because I'm thinking, if you think it still should be, have you considered the opposing side?
I do.
Guess. Yeah.
I think where it can be confusing is that we're talking about her belief, and we're not talking about somebody else's belief who might believe it for a different reason. And I think the risk is that we could set up a straw man by having this hypothetical person with a hypothetical belief on the hypothetical other side. What do you guys think?
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a bit of a dangerous gambit in a way, because if anything, it could make her feel stupid. As in, it would be better to confront her with examples of arguments from the other side and ask her views on. I could imagine, say, somebody sitting next to me saying that they feel opposite of this for these reasons. How would you reflect on that? That would feel less like it was challenging her ignorance of arguments from the other side, rather than actually challenging her view based on what the arguments from the other side might be. So right now, I think you're running the risk of making her feel silly for not knowing or not being able to articulate what these arguments are.
That's really helpful, I think. Yeah, because what I didn't want to do was just argue with her. That's what I was trying to avoid doing, was kind of bring in, like, okay, we have this other perspective. Like, I don't know, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I think
I didn't want to just present an argument against her. Well, what do you think about this and this and this and all these other reasons?
We want her to examine her own perspective. So we don't necessarily need to bring in somebody else's perspective in that sense. I don't think.
Exactly.
So if I don't want to change exactly what the claim is, but I'm wondering maybe because I think this is common with this topic, is people kind of can be talking about two different things, right? On one side, you're talking about, like, the law. On the other side, you're kind of talking about, I think you said, like, what's the right thing to do and what's moral. You mentioned, like, a morality kind of thing there. So if we had two different claims, one of them, it should be legal. You said you're at 100% on that. If we had a different claim where it was, it's moral or it's okay to get an elective abortion at, like, 39 weeks, how do you feel about that? Are you still at 100% there, or would you be somewhere very different?
I think I have no right in judging somebody else's journey and experiences, so I don't know what I would say is right or wrong. I live right or wrong by myself, and sorry, Nancy.
It's all right.
Come here. You're okay. Just get Nancy.
Yeah, and we don't have to go for too much longer. It's okay. Okay, so kind of, you don't want to judge somebody else and their decisions or something like that.
Yeah, because I think moral is personal.
there's an air of these questions that there is that sort of, again, it's starting to feel like it's building a trap around her inconsistency. And it can be really tempting to build an inconsistency trap when you're talking to people, because inconsistency is an interesting place to explore. But I think building this sort of, okay, well, you're saying this one thing legally, but you're sort of indicating something else morally. It's sort of, I'm wondering whether or not this is the right approach. Although it does, I know I've watched a little bit further in this video, but so I know it does get a little bit more interesting where these contradictions sit. But yeah, do you feel at this point in the conversation you weren't sure where to take it, or were you sort of looking for some pathway that you weren't sure about yet?
Yeah, I feel like I got lost here. Like I honestly did, and
That's
upon
cool,
reviewing
yeah.
it, I felt like I did too. I was like, I think I even just said it. I'm like, well, this was the claim on the board, but it seems like we're talking about something else, and that might have been my fault. I might have been kind of where I led the questions, not even realizing it. So I think that's part of the problem.
That's fine. And
It's
at least
great.
20% of the conversations I have, I think I'm lost in the conversation. Like, where am I? What are we talking about? I mean, that's just nature of conversations. I get it.
It really is. And I think it's something that doesn't go talked about nearly as often as it perhaps should, is that there are these odd moments in the conversation where you sort of feel it's deflating. You're not sure where to go with it. You kind of feel like there's a conversation here somewhere, but you kind of, it's losing some steam. And I can't tell you the number of times I've had conversations like that where literally 2 minutes later it's picked up and it's like, oh my god, this is a white knuckle ride all of a sudden. So it's a bad indicator of anything. And also I think as the conversation on sort of initiator, as the street epistemologist in this dynamic, the burden of the conversation's flow feels very much that it's on you. So if you can't find that path and navigate that path, then you start to self-doubt, and then you start to get a little bit concerned about the nature of the conversation. You're not sure where it's going to go. All of those thoughts aren't actually helping you be present in the moment and have that conversation. So I think one of the ways you can perhaps address this is have some go-to standard questions, that you could almost throw out at any moment just to prompt for people. And I think the SE community has quite a few interesting ones that it often will go to in these kinds of spaces. And I think just practicing sort of memorizing, even if you don't feel like they're really going to highlight anything particular in this topic, I think everybody here will say, I personally, and I'm sure everybody here, has given up on trying to predict what anybody might say in answer to a totally normal question. It's always an opportunity to be surprised. So I think having a few sort of set questions that you can use just to get the ball rolling again and the conversation recalibrated. And of course, there's always the option to say, okay, well, that was a really fun conversation. Maybe it's a good time to end it. There's nothing wrong with ending a conversation. You don't need to get that slam dunk. And because that sort of suggests something else, which you've got to be careful of, I think, and not just you, but everybody in the community is that chasing that rabbit. We're chasing a rabbit. We want to get an amazing aporia moment, a sort of life-changing moment where, and some great feedback, and the conversation partner breaks down in tears and say, "I've never been heard so much in my life." This is a driver, I think, and I think we have to be careful that if we're not careful, we pursue that beyond its rational utility, I think.
And I'll just show my cards. So if you look, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dali.
You first.
I was going to say that I'll show my cards. If you look at some of my videos, is that if I don't know what question to ask, I just repeat what they tell me.
Right, that's a good one. Yeah,
that's
good.
Smart.
Yeah,
mirroring active listening. That's great.
They say that, and I say, so you're saying this, and because better not to ask a question if you're not sure what to ask.
Yeah, and then they might expand on it. Yeah, and I find it hard to. I think you kind of were talking about this. Keeping track of like what was our main topic, where were we, but also still being present and responding live to what they just said. Because sometimes if you do nothing but respond to what they just said, you can just go, you're gone, and you're not on topic anymore at all, and they've led you down a total rabbit trail. But if you do the opposite and you're just like, wait, come back to the main thing, and you're just doing that over and over again, it's like you're not actually talking to them. You're not having a real conversation. It's going to feel artificial and robotic.
Yeah, for me, the mile high view here for me so far in the video is that it seems to me that I have in front of this person in front of me. She's telling me that she's doxastically closed on something, whether it be abortion, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter the belief, but she's telling me she's closed on this, and the reasons don't matter. And we can go over the reasons. We can go over this reason or that reason, but in the end, she's going to have this belief. And to me, like the mile high view is, well, we should probably talk about that, because we could talk about reasons, but in the end, it sounds like reasons don't matter, because what difference does it make if this person will never move on the scale? And that's sort of where I try to keep my head at this point. Would you guys, anybody else have a thought on that?
I'm not sure that she's really clearly said that she would never move. I think she initially started out with this strong position. And again, I think she's expressing confidence in her view rather than an unwillingness to move. And those two things can get conflated when people answer a confidence scale, right? It's like, how strongly do I want to project my conviction about this idea versus how open to it possibly being wrong am I? That they're not necessarily the same thing.
Right, sure.
So I think it's definitely worth exploring that. Like, is there anything that she could discover that might change her mind? That's always a great question, and it works with any claim. And it really gets to the heart of, I guess, reflecting on the reasons why she thinks it so strongly, believes it so strongly.
Which is kind of funny, because in my previous conversations, that was my go-to, and I used it both directions in like every conversation, and I never asked it in this one, and I don't know why. But so maybe it's because it's so much more of a normative claim. Maybe I'm just a little bit lost, because I feel like I'm much more familiar with SE conversations that are factual, and I'm not as familiar with navigating through these sorts of topics. I guess that could be part of it.
Yesterday,
just an experience thing.
Yesterday in Australia friendly practice, we had someone bring a normative claim and claim 100%. And the interviewer took that 100% and then asserted that they were doxastically closed about the thing rather than asking. At which point the feedback bar on the side exploded because everybody started typing. And I did. Okay, fine.
I'm not saying she's doxastically closed, but it seems like something we would need to investigate.
Yeah.
And especially with normative claims, you'll see 100%s described when they're not necessarily doxastically closed. So you've got to ask that thing.
Yeah. And that's what I was trying to explore with this, like, kind of argumentum ad absurdum, or however you say it. This kind of that's exactly what I was trying to get. I was like, are you really at 100%? Like, if we think about it a little more, maybe you're actually at 95, and it could be like conviction confidence thing,
Because the way I see it is like when someone is 100% on a normative claim, then we're talking about some other issues. We're talking about this kind of a purity culture, kind of a I'm identifying with a team thing. It's I'm trying to think of other, like, this morality, like purity morality. I mean, what am I trying to get at here? Like a
you're talking about Jonathan Haidt's moral foundations?
Yeah, possibly.
Or some sort of in-group thing, or
it's virtue signaling to a certain extent.
I am showing everybody that I'm on the pure side, that I have this pure view, and kind of
in-group loyalty.
I'm expressing this to the world.
Yes.
Yeah. It could be it.
Yeah, I'd pull it up, but I'd have to mess up my sharing, so I'm not gonna.
I'm sorry.
It's not cross the streams on the tech.
Don't cross the streams.
Granted, most of us have a lot of the same shared morals, like what's right and what's wrong. Like, there's some big ones that I think most people are on the same page with.
Okay.
But I think they're on the same page for all their own reasons. We're not all on the same page for something because we all think the exact same thing. So I think it's on a spectrum, just like most things.
Yeah. This is another like kind of hypothetical, kind of another extreme example. I'm just, once again, trying to get your thought, trying to really kind of pin down how you're evaluating these. Let's say a woman has a baby, and the next day she decides she doesn't want a baby. Should it be legal or moral to kill that baby then?
No.
Okay. You can explain that, or if you feel like it doesn't need to be explained, that's
I just
fine.
think that's a totally different topic from abortion at that point.
This is critical. That is
Yeah.
critical.
Yeah.
What is
What is it about abortion? What is it?
You were really passive about pressing that point, which I thought was really interesting. Well, one thing is I would definitely avoid saying pin down, because that slightly implies that the other person's being squirmy. And really,
identify or something. Maybe
just explore is something like that, for sure.
Yeah.
I think
that was an interesting question that you asked. I liked it.
It's a great question. Yeah, it is. And I think this is where and I was really surprised at how you kind of almost backed away from exploring that. Like the moment you'd asked it, like, because I think you agreed with it being a very extreme case and almost slightly absurd. You kind of, it felt like you backed away, but this is the point to sort of move forward, I think, and say, okay, interesting. So there is a point here where it's gone from, the other person should have autonomy to suddenly it's an absolute hard no. And I think in a moment, I don't want to spoil
we do
sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. I do pursue that because
because
to me, like, this is the big difference.
You'd have learned a lot.
This is the big difference between people who are like pro-life versus pro-choice versus somewhere in between, right?
She had a primary reason. You would learn it here because it seems like there's 1 second after, 1 second before, yes and no. What is it? What is it about the is it about the abortion? Like, if we could find, is it about something about life? Is it something about control with a mom and the child? Is it something about
because
something about there could be a million things. So
right, because she says, well, now we're not talking about abortion anymore, and it's like, but I'm thinking in my head, the people who are on the other side of this issue from you would completely disagree. They would disagree, absolutely disagree with you right now, and so.
And you may find out that there might be a reason here, that there is no cogent reason here. And then that's where you go explore that. Then we explore that.
Yeah, and I think it might be a terminology thing, and we get into that too. So
I am pro-choice, and I hate most of the arguments on my side. One of the arguments I hate the worst is it's a fetus, not a baby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, I care what you call it.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it seems like this is where all the gold is right here. So it's interesting.
It's a binary morality applied to an analog reality.
Yeah, if you back it up 5 seconds, you'll see my face do all sorts of things, which maybe was unintentional signaling. But
so let me see if I can find that spot. When I clicked it off, I lost my location.
One thing we're really good at.
This is another kind of hypothetical, kind of another extreme example. Just once again trying to get your thought, trying to really kind of pin down how you're evaluating these. Let's say a woman has a baby, and the next day she decides she doesn't want a baby. Should it be legal or moral to kill that baby then?
No.
Okay. You can explain that, or if you feel like it doesn't need to be explained, that's
I just
fine.
think that's a totally different topic from abortion at that point.
Okay. What is the big difference between a baby that was just born yesterday and, let's say, a baby that's going to be born tomorrow?
Good question.
Yeah, that's great.
Or you just mean
to you? What do you? Because when I asked earlier, like, do you think that's moral? You said that you wouldn't judge, right? But then when we changed it to it was born yesterday, it was born the day before, you said no, they shouldn't be allowed to, right? Or it would be, would you say that would be immoral? To kill the baby out the day after it's been born?
Yes. At that point, it would be. Yeah, I think that would be committing a crime.
Okay.
So so her intuition heuristic here is not to judge the reasons why the mother might choose to have an abortion at any point.
And I think this might be a virtue signaling sort of thing too, where she's like, I don't want to judge anybody, but I feel like I don't know. I don't want to say I didn't believe her, but at the same time, like, and I think we reveal eventually that she does have strong moral qualms with that. I think we get there eventually. I think she's maybe trying to present herself as like, hey, I am progressive. I am on this side, kind of like what Mark was talking about with that, like, you know,
Spoilers.
in group thing. So, sorry.
Spoilers.
But I think we do kind of dig deeper into that. Yeah.
But the interesting thing here is that her intuition heuristic is not don't judge the decisions of other people. And what's interesting about this pivot point here is that she's gone from saying we can't judge the reasons why somebody might choose to do something to suddenly no. it is definitely wrong. Hard no on that.
We can't judge and then we can judge.
Because suddenly we can absolutely judge whatever the reason the mother might have for doing that. And actually, you know, and this is obviously content warnery, you know, these topics are difficult. That there are reasons why a child might be born in such a condition as to it would be probably better for it not to survive. That there are reasons which, you know, conditions that people can be born into, which are going to just basically lead to a life of pain and discomfort and agony and probably an agonizing death. You know, still as a baby, right? So we're not talking about a condition that you could live with. It's a condition you can't live with it, and the journey to not living with it is not going to be a fun one. So it's interesting that in this space, this moral intuition has come down like a hammer and has become a strong no. And again, this is a very difficult topic to talk about, and people's personal experiences and relationships with these ideas are very complicated. But it is an interesting one, specifically because it plays into these moral intuitions that can be very contradictory. So yeah, this has gotten to a great point.
Yeah, and it kind of comes back to the whole idea of, you know, even people who I agree with, I would rather they agree with me for what I consider to good reasons. And so I maybe part of this in this conversation, I'm privileging my own moral intuitions. And, you know, it's like, while we might be on the same side, but I feel like maybe you haven't, but I don't know if I was thinking that in the conversation. I really don't, or if I'm just thinking about it going back through it. I might be trying to swayed her over to, you know, coming up with better reasons. And I don't know if I should have been doing that, but I don't think I was intentionally doing it, but I might have been doing it.
The pull of your own moral intuitions and decisions on these things is always going to be a strong one, and I think it's really worth like partly reviewing your own material and noticing when your biases are showing, when you're you know you're not you know, being as neutral as you could be, or not challenging, or maybe over challenging some topics depending on your own, in reference to your own views. I think it's something you get better at with practice. I think it takes work though, and yeah, but I think it's worthwhile in the SE space for sure.
Always like been the case.
Okay. Does morality depend on what the law is?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, I think it works really nicely if your morals line up with all the laws.
It'll be wonderful, wouldn't it?
That's like the perfect ideal
although
world.
It's probably impossible. We can't please everybody, right?
There's a reason why people commit crimes. Their morals are different than the law. So
So I'm still kind of curious, like, where, if it's not because of the law, is there a difference between killing the fetus the day before it would be born versus killing it the day after?
I think once it's born, it's no longer a fetus.
Right, right. Yeah, so at that point it would be a newborn infant, right? The technical terms, yeah.
And so I guess it depends on like your definition too of like, I think some of the arguments with pro-life are that it's a baby from conception, or that's life from conception.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of like the opposite extreme of kind of where we are, right? Yeah.
So, I mean,
sorry, where are we?
Where are we? The end of
we are
the term that we were talking about. Yeah,
where we are. Yeah,
I don't know of what we were discussing. Yeah, I think what I meant was that's the opposite end of what we're discussing.
Yeah.
I don't
By the
know,
way,
but
William,
it
that
probably
was
was a
your
little bit
line.
of signaling. Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
your line in the script
Yeah.
to call out the we, because you're the one who's really strong on neutrality. You are our bulwark for neutrality.
So I think one of the challenges here is that we're not talking about reasons. We're exploring the edges of the map, right? We're not really getting to reasons here, and I think that's what I don't think I've watched past this point. I think this is roughly where I got to when I watched it. So apologies if you're immediately going to start challenging these, but I'm feeling here that the conversation's a little bit lost, because we're not getting to the reasons why she thinks any one of these positions. We're just kind of working out where her views might change, and that can be part useful, but I think at this point it would be really good to start getting down to, okay, so why do you think that's the case? Why do you think it was different 24 hours ago? What is it that's changed? And she mentioned like a technical definition where she corrected you, but she didn't actually answer why she thought it was different 24 hours prior to the birth. And I think that the why and the reasons are really where we need to drill into here, because I think that's where the interesting SE work gets done.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, the day before a baby's born, she's still a part of a woman's body.
Mm-hmm.
So it is different, but I personally would have a really hard time with that. Like, even if it was me, if it was a friend of mine, if they decided to get rid of the baby the day before birth, like that would be
Yeah, I know you said you
tragic.
don't. I know you said you don't want to judge, but I think it's natural to have these moral intuitions.
I can have emotions without judging, without telling someone whether they made a right or wrong decision for them. Because if we're just speaking morally, obviously, if that is the law right now, I believe. No, I mean, right now it's across the board illegal, but
yeah, well,
it's always been illegal.
It felt like you were giving her permission to judge. That was a bit strange. It just felt like you were giving her permission to judge. In the way, I think he's, I think it's being distracted. So yeah, and that's why I think this is Nazi propaganda. Welcome back, Nate. No, I just, you're still on mute, my friend.
Yeah, sorry about that. My wife had to tell me something.
That's okay.
It's all good.
Suddenly I'm a Nazi. I don't.
It was a beautiful and eloquent explanation. I'm not going to go through it again. But, no, I just there was a moment there where I think you were saying like it's okay, like you were kind of saying like you don't want to judge, but like I think it's okay. It was almost like you were giving her permission to judge, and again like she started to talk about her reasons, and I think it was just like an odd reflection to make at that point, like to give her permission to be more judgmental of others, which I'm not really sure where that fit in with the narrative of kind of exploring her reasons.
Yeah, I think it was more just because we were kind of talking about morality, right? And to me, it was just something where I kind of, well, that's a little different than what you said earlier. And like, once again, I wasn't trying to trap her, but maybe I was just trying to get clarification. Like you said earlier that you wouldn't want to judge, but then you also just said that you would have a really hard time with that. And to me, that sounds like, well, maybe you are making a moral judgment, and maybe it has to do with what she means by judge. So I kind of was like, huh. It was one of those things. It was like, well, that's a little different. Like, should we talk about that? I don't know. Yeah,
absolutely. No, sorry. Her unwillingness to judge in one instance, and then a strong conviction that she not only will judge but has a hard, firm answer. That is an interesting contradiction. I think there was just a moment we went through, and I think you were just sort of mirroring, almost like in a way you were just kind of reflecting that she, it would be okay to maybe judge in certain circumstances, which felt like it was a strange. It didn't feel like it was adding to rapport. It didn't really feel like it was encouraging, exploring the epistemology any further. It just felt like it was more of a kind of personal. You were building a kind of model of your own views into the conversation a little bit. It was a very small thing, but I just thought it was interesting to notice.
I disagree. I think it did add to rapport.
Okay.
I was about to call him out on being human and making a human connection with willingness to gently push back and wrestle on the edge point.
Yeah, I was kind of acknowledging that, because to me it seemed like she was uncomfortable judging earlier, but now she hasn't. Just like it's okay, if you make a judgment here. It's all right that you have feelings. And she was just like, yeah, I'm a human, I have feelings. I'm like, yeah, it's all right.
I like the fact Dali was going to commend your humanity, and I was calling you a Nazi.
I mean, right now it's across the board illegal, but
yeah, well,
it's always been illegal after a certain point.
Yeah, at least in this state there are still exceptions.
You're okay. I know.
As of whenever they passed that law most recently, but
yeah,
it's definitely illegal. And I'd actually honestly, they just changed the law, so I don't know. But I think we can put the law side of it maybe aside for now. And I know that was the original thing, was should it be legal, and we can come back to that. But now we're kind of just talking about whether it's right or wrong, I guess, right? Yeah. So do you feel like you do feel differently about, the day after versus day before?
yeah.
Do you still feel differently about that? Or have you shifted on that at all?
I would say I think one feels worse and more wrong than the other. I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong.
Okay.
They're just at different places on
one does feel a little
spectrum.
more wrong.
Are feelings a good way to determine truth? You feel like you're encouraging her to express this in terms of feelings, which is an odd move for an SE conversation.
Yeah.
It's good for normative claims, though.
True.
It's a normative claim.
Normative claims.
I mean, she.
Go ahead, Mark.
No, go ahead, please.
At that point where we're literally talking about the day before, the day after. So.
Right. Yeah.
So there's possible reasons why there's the day before and the day after. There's
I'm wondering
possible reasons why this is the case. Why, some of the reasons could be she hasn't thought about it. That's a reason. Another reason is perhaps she might be alluding to maybe a sentience reason. One is like a more of a I'm trying to think of like the life of the mother supersedes life of the child at this point until this happens. I mean, I think who knows, but there's a lot of reasons she could give.
Yeah.
And I would like to know the reason. I'm trying to find the reason, and then we could evaluate the quality of this reason.
Yeah, and I should have asked again, because I asked her and she said something about, well, that's always been illegal, was her initial answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I explored. I was like, well, does our morality depend on what the law is? And she said no. And then I should have just repeated the question and said, okay, well, if it doesn't depend on the law, why is it different? But instead I bring in an outsider, and I to see if maybe she could come up with kind of what is the best argument on the other side or something like that. Or
no, I see where you're going.
Maybe the outsider was the wrong thing to do, but
no.
Maybe she just asked again.
yeah. No. I'm just eager to find out what her reasons are. Yeah.
Pro tip: give your outsiders fun names. Jimmy, Frank.
I hear it from somebody I respect. It should start with T.
Right, Tommy. That's right. That's it.
Tommy, Timmy. Yeah,
Tommy.
Two syllables starts with a T.
That's right. That's
Tracy. Yeah.
Tracy.
If somebody feels like they're not different, let's say we had the third person, Judy. All right, we can call her Judy. Judy says, "No, I think that it's wrong and should be illegal. Both the day before or the day after, or maybe even a week before." Why do you think Judy might feel that way? Because there are people Judy, right?
The outsider test doesn't work like this, I don't think, because you're just saying somebody disagrees with you. Why is that? And
it's like, Judy had the opposite view of you, then what would Judy's view be? If her view is the opposite of yours,
right? That might work. But again, if you had a claim that was like, I think it's wrong because X, right? And then Judy says, well, she doesn't believe that X, or like she says that X is not
Right.
the
So
consideration here. It should be Y, right?
So minus X.
Yeah.
Right.
Then you can do the outsider test. Right now, it's just like somebody's disagreeing with you. Why is that? It's like, wow, I don't know. This has got an existential.
Yeah.
But this is
It's
good.
really helpful.
We're trying to get to the reason. That's good.
Yeah.
Right.
It's really helpful.
Cool.
Because,
You're using an outsider to ask for a steel man. It's not an outsider test, but it has a lot of the same hallmarks, and it's just fine.
Right. Yeah. And I think I labeled that as the on my little chapters thing. Here, would you like to build a steel man? Like, I guess I'm kind of thinking of this and like, if you took a debate class, you want to kind of, what are the strongest arguments on both sides, that kind of thing. And maybe I'm jumping ahead of myself. Because you're right, Will. I still haven't really gotten an answer. Why are they different? Why are these two things, they make you feel different things? So
I think it's true that we go ahead, Dali.
I suggest that she got the answer. Spoilers, but she seems to add nuance and reflection. So even if she didn't give you an answer, if she got one, you're good.
It's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
And I do think sometimes it's easier to frame our thoughts in opposition to a critic. Like, sometimes it's only when our ideas are challenged or we reflect on them in relation to challenge that it really helps clarify our thought processes. So maybe this hypothetical outsider who's challenging the view, just the mere sort of process of imagining an opposition argument might help somebody rally their thoughts and sort of find a footing for why they would argue with them, or what their counterpoints might be. I don't know. I would have to think about that.
For not really seeing them as different, but seeing them as kind of the same.
I think that's totally valid. Like, I understand it.
I forgot what the question was.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
What are her reasons?
Right. We're
what
not.
Might her reasons be?
Yeah. So the question was, if somebody does feel differently than you do, they think it should be illegal. In this case, like after,
why do they think it's
right before, or the week before? Why might they feel that way?
Right. Yeah. We're not saying that Judy's thoughts or feelings are invalid or anything like that, or do we have to necessarily validate them? I'm just wondering, if we try to put ourselves in Judy's shoes, what would she say?
Well, yeah.
Her reasons for that might be
up to like a week before birth or whatever you said.
Yeah, she's saying that a week before, or the day after, or the day before, that's all the same. It's all wrong. And maybe Judy even thinks maybe a month before, right? But Judy doesn't think that there's a big difference between, whether it's still in the womb or whether it's out of the womb. Why do you think Judy might think there's not much of a difference there?
Probably because she believes life begins at conception. I mean, at that point, there is a point where the fetus becomes viable on its own. And at that point, you're killing a viable being.
All right, two different terms. Maybe we need to clarify those terms. So I just want to make sure I understand the words you're saying, because you said conception, but you also said viability, right? Generally, what people mean by conception is like fertilization, like egg meets sperm.
Right.
Viability is usually something later.
Should get her to define those terms, not don't define them for her.
yeah, I should have. She agrees with them, but maybe you're right. I should definitely have her define them. Yeah.
And if she agrees and it doesn't mess up rapport, it's not a strike.
Yeah.
For 26 weeks.
I don't know exactly where, but it's at the point when it can live on its without the hope. Or the body.
So is it possible maybe Judy thinks once it can live on its own, then it's like a person?
Yeah.
And maybe you're killing a person at that point? What do you think about if Judy said that?
I would think, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
And this is where you end it right there, right?
What?
Oh, wait, no.
Probably could have, yeah. I mean,
there's 10 minutes left. Oh, well. Okay.
So Judy believes that you shouldn't the abortion should be illegal because you're killing a person.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where we got to, and it was terribly confusing way to get there, and I don't think I did a good job.
It's interesting, and then we could get some more definitions, like what's a definition of a person. It'd be kind of interesting to find that out.
Right, and I think it's something I would have liked to have explored more, but her dog started getting antsy, and it had been going a long time, and I feel bad taking up too much of somebody's time.
She seems to find definitions of terms persuasive.
I don't know. I don't know that moment was as the one thing that seems to be consistent in her view is that her empathetic abdication of her. She often is saying, like, I might be wrong. I don't want to make the decision on behalf of somebody else, right? And so it would seem to me that she's not necessarily being inconsistent here. She's just saying
that might be your primary reason. Yes,
I might. Yeah, like I'm okay with somebody, if somebody in that difficult situation wants to make that decision for their own self, then I think they should be able to do that. And if somebody says that they don't want to make that decision because they believe something different, then she would be equally supportive of that view almost, right? That in many ways, I don't think that she's really contradicted herself here. She's just saying, I don't want to make that decision on behalf of somebody else.
So let's suppose that's let's suppose that's her primary reason. Like just for argument's sake, we know for sure her primary reason isn't so much the morality of abortion. It's more the primary reason why is who am I to make the decision for another person in another situation? And then maybe the thing to explore is, well, under what circumstances do you think that would change? Where you think you could make because a judgment for another person in some kind of situation or similar.
We've discovered one of those, which is the moment the baby's born. Now she feels that she can make a judgment on behalf of the mother's decision to terminate the fetus. And
this is part of the reason why I think I focus on the morality, because I think maybe I'm wrong about this, but like in general, all of our laws have some sort of moral underpinning. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but like, how else do we come up with what should be legal and what shouldn't, right? You have to, why is murder wrong? Because you're harming somebody. And the people who are on the pro-life side would say, what'd you say?
War on drugs.
At one point, she says that morality.
Not all of our laws, right?
At one point, she says morality supersedes legality. I think she says that in some sense. And at that point, I don't think you would need to discuss legality. I think because she's telling
right,
you.
And
agreed.
Yeah, because there are a lot of different positions people can have on this. Mm-hmm. There are clearly those people who are way at one end, right? Mm-hmm. Who say life begins at conception, and even in vitro fertilization is murder. You're murdering embryos or something like that, right? There's people on that end, and then there are people who say,
"Is that a bike?
Maybe that was a branch falling off that tree."
I thought somebody crashed a bike for a
second. Yeah, now I'm worried. And then there are people kind of on the other extreme, though, who would say something like, it's okay, you can terminate the pregnancy, you can kill the fetus the day before it's due, right? Mm-hmm. And those are kind of like opposite ends of the spectrum. And then I guess there's even people, I don't know if these people exist, but maybe there'd be people who say, you can kill a kid as long as it's not 1 year old or something like that.
And I only said that because I think I saw an SD conversation with somebody who said that.
Well, I mean, an argument could be made. I mean, I think that would be a different type of claim. Like, would it be wrong to kill a child? Or is it always wrong to terminate, the life of anybody? Really? I mean, this is because at the other end of the spectrum is euthanasia, right? Where we talk about, terminating life when the quality of life and suffering is, So this is it's not necessarily a hard stop. These moral intuitions, these intuition heuristics that people are using, carry on from this point and extend into other debates in this similar space. It's a sort of a continuum of moral questions.
Within my lifetime, South Korea started naming their babies earlier than 1 year after birth because they're infant mortality was so high, they didn't want to get attached.
Oh wow.
Yeah, some cultures do name their children at 1 year.
I don't want to say crazy, but there are people with lots of opinions out there.
Okay.
Right? So there are those kind of extremes, and then there might be people space in the middle as well. I'm wondering, does Judy necessarily have to be all the way at that extreme, or could Judy be somewhere in the middle, you think?
I'm trying to make sure I'm following.
Sorry, I know this is kind of
yeah,
confusing. We keep
so-
talking about Judy and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, because I think sometimes we're getting away from abortion. Because like I think of abortion as the termination of a pregnancy.
right.
I don't
Right.
think of it as the termination of the child.
Okay.
So like the up till a year after they're born, like that doesn't make sense to me. Because at that point, yeah, of course
Right.
it's murder.
Yeah, and yeah, okay. Yeah, we don't necessarily think about it.
They're no longer it's not about a pregnancy anymore. It's about
Right.
killing the human.
Yeah. I guess then the
So,
question would be like, is it
Judy?
yeah, like is it a human person like when it comes out of the birth canal?
Right.
Or was it also a human person when it was like 10 seconds before it came out of the birth canal?
Yeah, 10 seconds before, yeah.
Okay.
But at some point,
Yeah. So
I think that goes back to like viability.
okay,
again.
so viability.
So yeah, I like this part.
Like
I like
that,
where you're going here. I think she's. Yeah, I mean, there's some things you need to define, but
Yeah, you
think-
found the edge case.
yeah.
You're tracking it right back. Okay, now 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 2 minutes.
But what is it about
Yeah.
being in a canal versus being outside the canal? What is it? What is fundamental to being a person that it seems like you're saying? What is it about being a person that I don't know?
I mean, there was a moment where she was talking about the host, the mother in this case, and at the point where the baby's born, the umbilical cord is still connected, right? So until such time as the umbilical cord is does that change anything morally? Is there an intuition there? And one of the things, though, I think might be a little bit difficult here is that she's not making a proclamation about what somebody should or should not do. As in, I think she may, were she to discover that she needs to make these decisions for herself, I don't think she would be using the same moral framework. And I don't think that's inconsistent. I think what she's just saying is she doesn't want to apply her moral intuitions to dictate what another person may or may not choose to do.
I think Will's right. I think the primary reason, if you're really backed up, was it has nothing to do with abortion. It's
autonomy.
Making a decision for another person.
Yeah. And I think in that conversation I didn't really like go after that, and maybe it's partially just because I generally agree with her. That might be why we spent more time talking about morality and how we feel about it than whether it should be legal. It might be because I also think for the most part, and the vast majority of cases, it's up to the doctors and the woman, and so that might be why I didn't spend much time on that and going back over and reflecting on it. And I think that's part of the reason why the conversation felt muddled at times.
So one question, some of the thoughts that I've had in this space and in similar conversations was this idea of like, is autonomy always something that somebody, can somebody make a conscious and sound decision? Might somebody, for example, who finds themselves pregnant be suffering from tremendous anxiety and fear and trepidation and depression about the upcoming event? I can imagine that just physiologically a pregnancy can be an incredibly difficult thing to deal with, and I also imagine emotionally and just in terms of just the impact on your life and your future, I can imagine there are moments where you might be terrified about what's happening, and that you might have an intuition that would say, this needs to stop. Now, in that situation, would it be wrong for people to suggest that there are support available, that maybe that this isn't the only option, that you may want to explore, the idea that, or maybe other people, for example, sharing experiences where they've maybe had the same fears and same trepidations and gone on to have never regretted the decision to have the child, for example? Is that intervening in the same way? Is that going to be changing somebody's autonomy, perhaps by giving them perhaps different information or more information? And to some extent, is their autonomy compromised by their fear? Is their autonomy compromised by their anxiety about this event, and then perhaps their lack of knowing what it's going to be like? And so maybe, there are lots of things that could compromise our you might argue autonomy, but it's just kind of influencing our what appears to be free will, right? These are things that might influence our free choice. So I think even within the space of allowing people their autonomy, somebody might in a moment of anxiety and depression and difficulty might make a decision that they will regret for a very long time. And it doesn't seem to be, maybe that's not always a great thing to do. And so, but then would suggesting to that person to hang on and not make this decision, would that be compromising their autonomy? Would that be negating their will in that moment? I think there are definitely places I think you could explore the autonomy question.
I think my autonomy is enhanced by being well informed.
Right. It's great framing. Great. Yeah, I love it.
Once again, I have a background in biology, but I'm not I'm not like a OBGYN. I don't.
Hashtag argument from authority.
Field. So do you think maybe that viability place might be somewhere where our moral intuitions change or not?
Yeah, I'm sure that plays a role in a lot of people's brains, morals, and everything.
Okay. Do you think that I know it's not necessarily a discrete line, but do you feel like that might also be something where you feel like your moral intuitions change? Maybe.
Probably, because I definitely feel like there's a...
Nice asking the question again to get a different answer. Well done.
Thanks.
That was good.
An abortion at the day before someone's due,
right?
Then there is at 6 weeks or whatever on the timeline.
And I'm pretty sure an abortion the day before, we just call that an induction, and she delivers the baby.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody's killing a baby.
Anyone's going to recommend that.
Yeah, you're not going to find a doctor who's going to be okay with that. I don't think. Yeah, so it's kind of I think there's a technical term for it, like an argument ad absurdum or something like that. It's like taking things to kind of like their like crazy limits or whatever. Yeah. But it can be useful to kind of like feel out what exactly it is that's making us feel a certain way or think a certain way.
Yeah. Totally.
Okay. Cool.
It's great. Good to explain that. I think we don't spend enough time explaining those sorts of things. That why this kind of question is being asked and things. I think sometimes it can get in the way of the flow, but I think at the end here it's like that's nice to do. I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I try to do that sometimes where I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna get your confidence now. I'm gonna ask you some questions to explore this. I'm gonna push back a little bit here. I try to do that in my conversations. Mm-hmm. I think it works. I don't think it feels too weird. Maybe it's weird, but I think it's just kind of like it comes along back to that kind of informed consent sort of thing. Like, hey, I'm gonna do this. Is that okay?
It's not a trick we're doing. It's not magic that's going to be ruined by knowing how it worked. It's in fact, if anything, we really would love you to know how this works so that you can use it on yourself internally. I mean, this is it's very much the purpose. Yeah.
Oh, I guess we kind of talked about two different things, which is probably my fault for like kind of getting distracted. One of them. The main question that was on the board was, should abortion be legal in all cases? And you said like in all cases, and you were saying yes, 100%. Where do you still feel like you're at 100% there? Or do you feel like that might have changed?
Yeah, because I guess before, even when I said this all before, I was thinking in my head, like the viability came into play with that, like, and medical considerations and recommendations. Like, I would always defer to a medical professional in any sort of this. That's why, like, I guess it does get confusing when you're talking about like legality, because to me they shouldn't exist together.
Yeah, you don't necessarily want the government making healthcare decisions for people.
No,
that makes sense.
In a perfect world, no.
Right. Yeah, I understand that. I understand that moral intuition.
Yeah.
So you still feel like you're like at 100% on that one. But the other one was, is it moral? And we didn't get a percentage on this one, but if the claim was abortions are always moral, no matter what or no matter when, where do you think you are there?
Like always when you say always moral, or what do you mean by moral? Like, you mean morally good?
Yeah, like morally good, like they'd be morally acceptable, or
I'm not sure it was ever really framed like that until just now, but I think maybe asking that as a question maybe might have been better. It felt like you were kind of saying this was the other thing that we were talking about, but I don't think it was ever quite framed in that way up until this moment.
I think she used the word first, actually, moral.
Sure, the morality of it for sure, yeah, has been brought up. But I just think there was this that it is always moral is not the framing I think we were exploring until this moment.
The question was moral. It was should be legal.
Initially, yes, yes,
yeah.
And then
was moral.
And then this current framing is always moral, which that specific framing, the idea that it's, there's a moral component to it has been discussed, but the idea that it is always moral, I don't think is a framing that until this moment had been raised.
Yeah, I don't think I used it in that word, but I think that's what I was asking about with the whole like up to the moment of birth, like hypothetical was like that always. But yeah, I don't think that exact phrasing was used, but I think we were talking about it. But maybe that wasn't clear. Yeah, like I could probably be more clear with that. So.
She accepted it. She didn't reject. She didn't balk at it. So good on that. Obviously, asking moral and confidence percentage is complicated. Another way to get the same answer, or at least the answer I think you're looking for, is how many legal abortions are moral? Do you think there's a fraction of legal abortions that are immoral?
That's a really good question.
Because now you're talking about the real world, and very few people are going to say, oh, look at the bell curve, and there are no exceptions.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. That would be good.
That would be a really good
like
one.
Not immoral.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my morality on the subject does like shift through a spectrum throughout like the term.
Okay.
Like I guess we'll call it like the pregnancy term. Like
yeah. So like
at some point it becomes kind of like harder for me to swallow, but that doesn't mean I need to tell somebody else how to live their life. Like
that's still the primary reason. Yeah,
that's it. It's her, what she would choose to do is not the same as what she's prescribing for other people. I think she's been remarkably consistent on that.
She has. And so
she was excellent in this. Yeah, I botched my questions, but she rolled right with it. She was really good. She was great. So
says, yeah, we can do that. Could do that. It's gonna be that sucks, but do what's best for you.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So that. Feelings change throughout. Maybe at conception, you feel one way. Day before, moments before birth, feel a different way.
Yes.
And then there's that place somewhere in there that we're not necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine
obstetricians, so we don't know that maybe where the line is, but there's some gray areas somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of like just crawls up the spectrum. Like I mean. It sucks in all cases. I don't like hearing that anything didn't get to experience life or,
Right.
But.
Yeah. No, I mean.
That's because
Sorry, let me say that again. Sorry. That's why this has been difficult, because I think you've been shifting framing there from talking about what she would prescribe as a prescription to other people, what she would say. So the law is basically a moral encoding, an injunction against people. No, nobody else can do this now, or yes, this is allowed now, right? So she's initially talking about what she would prescribe to others, and there's also this other framing: is what would she decide? What are her moral intuitions about what she would do in this situation? And those two things are very different. And in that moment, I think you move from one to the other. As I think, kind of, I think it actually to be and this. Please don't take this as too harsh a criticism, because I actually think it was a tricky thing to notice in a few places. But I think it's been, for her, it's been difficult to answer these questions, because I think the framing has been shifted quite often, either in your questions or in her where she's what position she's responding on behalf of. So yeah, it's really useful to try to notice where you get these little divergent paths in the conversation, and sometimes they can be really hard. So yeah, this is a great example of this, I think, where the perspective is very subtly different and can go unnoticed.
All I gotta say is that when at this stage of doing SE, when I was just starting out, and if someone gave me this type of difficult normative claim, I wouldn't have done this a tenth as well as you just did. You did a great
thank
job. You really, truly, I think you really picked a really difficult, emotionally laden claim that's normative, and that's about as hard as you can do. That you agree with.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I honestly, I'm just like, what are some hot button issues, and I put them on my board, and then you get into the conversation like, what have I signed myself up for here? Did I bite off more than I can chew? Yeah, but well, thanks, Mark. That's really appreciate that.
Like, yeah, of course I would.
Oh my goodness, sour cream! You're excited. All right, cool. Well, Alex, how do you?
Great dog name.
She's ready to go. How do you think this conversation went?
It was good. I mean, it was fine.
Okay, maybe a little less contentious than other topic discussions you've had on this topic before.
Objection, leading the witness.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks so much for your time. I have, like I said, I started a YouTube channel, so I got a little card here for you. If you want it, you can check it out. What I'm doing is a technique called street epistemology. Fancy way of basically saying, talking to people about the things that they believe and why they believe it, and exploring those together. So.
Oh, I thought she was getting into something.
Oh, no, we're okay. Do you want?
Awesome.
That is an insufficient description of street epistemology. That can describe almost any conversation. You're gonna say
there's a better description on the back of the card. It's okay.
Yeah, good. All right, then you're let off the hook.
You want a water or any kind of drink or anything?
I have some in my car.
I think you did a lot of great things here, Nathan. I think you did really well. I think this is awesome. I think if it's hard to take a lot of especially, I hope we don't seem like we're piling on criticism or anything like that. I think part of it is I'm really excited. I'm really excited how well you're doing, and I want you to get better. That's really where I come from with this kind of stuff. Really, truly. Like, I'm excited. Hey, he's a new person doing SE as a new content creator. He's doing a great job, and we just want you to keep doing it. So that's awesome.
Thanks.
I think if I it's hard to pay attention to a bunch of stuff at once, because then you just get lost. Like, I need to pay attention to this thing and pay attention to this thing. From my own perspective, if I was to say, pay attention to one thing, I would try to get through this conversation like this, a normative conversation that you agree with. And by the end, that person have no idea where you are on their belief, where you believe. If you can, and that's really hard to do. If you can get through an abortion conversation, and by the end, they're like, "Is it been a good conversation?" And we've done SE, and they wouldn't really have an idea where you are. I think that would be a really good.
It's a great indicator.
Would be
if you manage
really
to do
good
that,
thing to focus on. I think
William owes you a plaque.
Wait, what?
Why?
Well, because William is our cheerleader for neutrality.
Oh, yes, okay. Very much so. It seems.
And so you get a certificate. It might be only because budget.
I'll work on
that. I feel like I definitely messaged some here, and she probably could guess somewhat where I am. Viability isn't. Well, I don't know. Honestly, I'm not sure on some of this stuff. Like, it gets fuzzy in the middle.
That's
so
all.
I hope she wasn't just agreeing with me and being like, "Oh yeah, my intuition's changed here." I feel more like hopefully we kind of unveiled what her moral intuitions were. That's why I felt like maybe we kind of succeeded despite me here. Unless she was just lying to get out of it.
This is a success. Nothing was botched. I think it was a great conversation.
Or was high. She gained nuance.
Yeah.
Awesome.
This is great. Absolutely.
I definitely think like this is a great. It's really worthwhile practicing having more conversations where you agree with the position, and especially ones where they are these normative claims, because they are the hard cases. They're the ones where I think you learn the most, right? it's really good practice, and I think more people should in the SE community should be encouraged to have conversations where they agree with the position and try to hide their agreement from their conversation partner, make sure that they get through that conversation without tipping their hand, as it were. So it is a tough case, and I think like definitely commend the fact that you've had this conversation. It remained polite and civil all the way through. Just and I'm not trying to suggest there's a very low bar for success here, but honestly, just encouraging somebody to have a polite conversation with a stranger and put their thoughts in order is going to be enough to make them think about their reasons. And you may well have had more of an impact here in this conversation than you necessarily may feel you did, because she's had a polite, respectful conversation with somebody where she's not felt threatened. And I, at no point, no matter how off the rails you may feel this has gone in places, it never felt threatening. It never felt aggressive. It never felt like you were being intimidating. This was a positive experience for this person, I think. And I think if you have positive experiences where you're exploring these ideas, I think that's always going to leave you, with more of an opening to reflect. I
get wanting to have like to flash a sign during the conversation saying, I don't endorse this. I don't believe this. Like a sign. I don't believe this. I get the feeling of wanting to do that.
It's Judy. It's not me. It's
not
Judy.
Me. I understand that. I do understand that. But it's not. It's not about us. It's not about me. Not about my belief. It's about her and her belief. And so, what I believe really shouldn't matter to her belief.
Which is why I think opening up the conversation, saying like, hey, I'm gonna, regardless of whatever you choose on the board, I'm gonna ask you some questions that might challenge your position. So and if you've got things on the board that are like, I'm pro or against X, hopefully that will indicate to somebody, look, the purpose of this is for me to try to find ways to encourage you to reflect on your position, whatever that position is. And I think if you do that at the beginning, you're kind of taking the concern that you might have that you might be unintentionally virtue signaling it for something you don't believe through your questioning.
But you could even say, before we start this conversation, because I realize we're going to be talking about abortion and it's a really hot topic right now. I may very well agree with you, but I may very well disagree with you. I'm hoping by the end of this conversation, you won't know where I am. And so you've just preempted it. You've told them. You've told them that I might agree with you. I might not agree with you. I don't even know what you're going to say yet about it because we haven't heard the belief. But I'm going to really try to. If I'm doing it well, you're not going to know where I stand on it. So they're already primed. They know that you're going to try to keep yourself out of it.
Like Will said earlier, it's not a magic trick. It's go ahead, come on back behind the curtain. See how the sausage is made, right?
This is what we did.
I think I mixed that same message with, and at the end, you can ask me any questions you like, and I'll be completely transparent. That keeps it down from the I'm trying to trick you. It's like, okay, you can put this aside until later. Great.
Yeah, I like that.
I really like the idea that you may give that option to the person, especially because again, I think it stops it feeling like you're holding your cards closely to trick them. But I do think like telling them that you will challenge them regardless of, you're going to be asking respectful and polite questions to encourage them to reflect regardless of what claim they may choose or any claim that they want to bring to the table, that's the purpose irrespective. So I think if you've waited to the point where they've chosen the claim and then you inform them, oh, by the way, I'm going to be challenging you, it might lose some of its punch. But the idea that you would say, no matter what you choose, no matter whether it's a question that's on the board or whether it's a question that you choose that you'd like to explore with me today, I would be really keen to ask you respectful questions that will challenge that position. And I think that in doing that, you'll worry less about being promoting a view that you don't necessarily hold.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to say about that is that I find when then I have my own personal belief, and it's a kind of belief that if during a conversation I'm thinking to myself, I don't believe this, and I hope people don't think I believe this. To me, that's a signal that it seems like I have a belief in myself that might need to be SE'd.
Yeah.
Because I might be it sounds like I'm holding a belief a little too tightly.
Yeah.
I'm going to play the outro faster.
Thanks so much.
Nathan, that was awesome.
Have you ever heard
That
of
was awesome.
Human Library. That sounds kind of familiar. I might have to check. Is it a YouTube?
It's an international organization. They're basically like all sorts of other stories.
Can't really hear what's being said.
The Human Library, where you can check out a person.
Nathan, you bit out as much as you could chew on this conversation. That was awesome. I say for the next review, I would pick a factual claim and then make it like, is the world is like, I believe like the world is flat or the world is round. I mean,
that sounds refreshing. That sounds
I think honestly, you got this video, you went out, you did it, you just putting yourself out there in the first place takes so
awesome,
much
really.
courage. Sitting in front of a complete stranger, especially a contentious topic like this, as we talked about, a normative claim, and you got the video put together, like you published it. I mean, honestly, that's like so many people never get that far with it. Just the bravery to go out there and stick a camera out there and put the table out and start to do this, and then to put that video out there and make it available, and then to come here and have horrible people like myself giving it an unnecessary kicking is great. Honestly, I think it's fantastic. So keep it up, man. It's great stuff.
Please make get better. More videos. But this is awesome. Really, I'm so excited that you're doing this. Yeah. Keep on going. It's awesome.
Awesome. 100%. Yeah. Well, to go along with that, Mark, I think you said before, like if you go back and listen to your old stuff.
I can't. I don't even bother. But, but I think I get too. It's just I can't cringe on myself. So yeah.
It's
part of the reason why I'm like. Yeah, I was like, I think I did a pretty bad job here, but I think I was still successful.
No, you
anyway.
did not do a bad job. You did not do a bad job. No, that's not. No, we don't want you. We do not want that to take home message. We're so excited that you're doing this. We want you. We want you to improve, and we see it in front of you. We see like, oh, if you just did this or just did this, I mean, you'd be like, totally different SEO a week from now. We see it. That's why we're excited for it.
Learn by doing. I think most people do. Like you get better with experience. So
absolutely.
But I just want to go ahead and put it out there and encourage people. Like, hey, look, you know what? You can mess it up and ask the wrong questions, and it's still
all right, man.
You're out there doing your best. So
we all right. This is right.
Anthony's expressed that. Yeah, Anthony's expressed very much the same view. Like he genuinely hates a lot of his early videos. He feels terrible about it. Like, but he was literally making this up, learning how to do this, and evolving it on the fly. And I think honestly, it's really valuable to have these early examples so that you can see how much progress you're making. I think
and you're finding your own style too.
Yeah, totally.
Because when I was first starting out, I was trying to like literally copy. I was more trying to copy Reed, I think, than Nathan than Anthony.
Yeah,
I was like literally trying to copy him, like and then
now we're trying to
your own
copy
way
you.
of how. What's that?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Don't do that.
I swear, the other day somebody actually did an actual impression in his SE review. He adopted Mark's tone of voice. It was a brilliant impression.
That's great.
Don't do that.
He went full Solomon, and one thing we do know is never go full Solomon. There's no turning back from that.
Oh God. Yeah. Anyway, but you'll find your own style after a while, where you'll just you'll have your own examples you like to use, your own methods of doing your outsider tests and things like that, and it just and that's cool when that's fun. Like when you kind of discover like what works for you, and kind of thing. It's neat.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
awesome. Well, I so appreciate this. All the feedback. This has been so helpful. Because there's so many different things here that I had kind of thought about or hadn't thought about at all. So hopefully my next conversation with this sort of topic, can be a little less confused.
Cool. So, have you decided whether to tell the audience the secret that we talked about before the show?
The secret.
What